All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and get started again. I apologize for the technical difficulties there. Just want to thank you all for joining us today with the International Association of Woodcarvers, where woodcarvers are helping woodcarvers. Today is Saturday, the 26th, a little bit after 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I want to thank you all for joining us today with the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today, we've got on our meeting Mr. Dave Francis. Dave's coming to us from the British Columbia, about 3 hours north of Spokane, Washington. He has a wood carving website called SnowCottageCarvings. He's on Instagram and Facebook, so make sure you go out and check out Dave's work there when you get a chance. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's going on with the International Association of Woodcarvers before we get started with Dave. We do have a new newsletter that we are going to be producing that's going to be starting next month in March. We placed our link tree out in the chat. So if you go to the link tree, you'll be able to find the sign up there in the link tree. Make sure you go out and sign up there. You can also find our merchandise there. You can also find the Buy Me a Coffee link. If you want to support the International Association of Woodcarvers, make sure you go out and check out that link there. We also have all of our meetings available on YouTube. I know I've talked about that several times before. We started doing something called Quick Cuts, which is just brief videos from the previous week's meeting of things that we thought was of interest to the carver that they may want to go out and watch. That doesn't mean don't watch the whole meeting. You can watch the whole meeting and also the quick cuts. Those are out there. So make sure you go out and check those out. I want to remind you about the Woodcarving Academy. Remember again that they have subscriptions, 1 month, 3 month, and a whole year. They have all kinds of wood shops or workshops that they've had in the past where you can go out and watch the videos on there. Subscribe with them if you get a chance. Again, it's woodcarvingacademy.com. Some of the workshops that's coming up in the near future, Dave Stetson has a class that's going to be starting on March the 12th called Butterflies and Bag Lady and Gentleman Friend. If you're wanting to sign up for that class, again, it starts March the 12th. You need to reach out to Dave Stetson and get signed up, and you also will have to buy the rough outs for the class. So you probably need to go ahead and do that if you're planning on taking that class so you have time to get the rough outs. The rough outs are coming from Dwayne Gosnell, so you can also check out those rough outs on his page. I think it's dgosnellwoodcarving.com. Janet Cordell is going to be doing a class on bighorn sheep. That starts on May the 9th. So if you're interested in that class, check out Janet Cordell. I know it's starting to warm up some in some places, and there's a lot of shows that are starting. I think Dave Stetson is at a show this weekend. Make sure you go out and support these shows. Again, these people are putting on shows so you can see carvings from other carvers and also be introduced to new types of carvings. There's a lot of workshops that goes on in these local clubs. So make sure you go out and check out those shows. One of the ones I want to talk about is the Cca Competition that's coming up in September. Again, that's September 24th and 25th in Colorado Springs, Colorado. If you're interested in attending that, you probably need to go out and check out the Caricature Carvers of America website. There you can sign up for the meet and greet. I think there's classes there that you can sign up for. There's going to be 6 instructors. There'll be vendors there. I think Helvie Knives is going to be there, which is one of our supporters. Heineke Wood's going to be there. And then they're going to be releasing their new book, which is called The Eyes Have It, where the CCA members have gone in and taught you how to carve eyes the way that they carve them. So it should be a good show to attend. Make sure you try to sign up for that and go out and check that out in September. Having said all of that, again, we're happy to have Dave Francis on with us today, coming to us from British Columbia. He's going to talk to us about his carving journey. So Dave, thanks for coming on today, and I'll go ahead and turn the meeting over to you.
Hi, how you guys doing? A great honor to be here today. Very humbling to be asked, actually. But I wanted to just give you some background on how I started carving, what I do now. If you do have any questions along the way, please, write them down. Let the guys know when they can unmute you, and you can ask the questions. I'll try to answer anything I can. If I don't know the answer, I'll make something up, but it'll sound really convincing, so you'll believe what I'm saying. But I've been carving now, this coming November, it will be 30 years that I started carving. And how I started, my wife and I love Christmas. we have a lot of country antiques, country furniture sort of thing. And I would be buying Country Living magazine and Country Home magazines. And I would see in the Christmas issues, carving Santas and stuff in the displays. And at that time, I couldn't find what I was seeing in stores. Again, we're talking before the internet, so it wasn't like you could go and look online and find something to look at on there and search stuff out. So it was just a matter of hitting bookstores and magazine stores and trying to figure it out. And my wife went away one weekend to Spokane with her mom and her sisters for a girls' kind of craft weekend. And as she was leaving, I said, "Oh, bring me something back." And when she showed up back after the weekend, she brought me a carving book, and it was actually by Ron Ransom. And there's probably a lot of you out there that probably started learning from one of Ron's Santa books. And I took that book and I got myself a carving knife, and it probably took me about 2 to 3 weeks before I got the courage up to actually try it. And I did that first Santa, and I have it here. I'll show you later. And I laughed because I said I couldn't do something that ugly now if I tried to do it. But at that time, I thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. So off I went. And all you needed is a little encouragement. And at that time, I was a hairdresser. I cut hair, was a hairdresser for 23 years. And at that time, I took my second Santa that I carved to the salon, and one of my customers saw it there, and we were talking about it. And she said, "Well, how much is it? Do you sell them?" I'm like, "Yeah, I never thought about it, but yeah, if you'd like it, it's $25. And she said, "Oh, I'll take that." I thought, this is great. So I went home that night and I carved another one, painted it, and took it back in the next day, and that one sold. And off it went. That was in November, and by the time Christmas hit that year, I had saved enough money to buy my wife a really nice sapphire ring for Christmas, and off we went. I started about a year after that. I started contacting stores and did a little bit of consignment at the start. And then it slowly got to the place where I was able to wholesale carvings, and I carve a lot. I do carve right now roughly in between 200 to 300 Santas a year, just depending on the sizes, obviously, and the amount of time that I have. But one of the very first stores I went to, and what I always tell people is, especially as artists, we sell ourselves short. We're probably our worst critic. I walked into a store at Whistler Ski Resort. If you're skiers at all, it's just north of Vancouver. It's a world-class skiing resort, and I wanted to get my stuff into that town for all the tourists and everything. And I didn't know there was a Christmas store there. I actually had heard from someone about a different store that was there, so I went and I talked to that store actually first. And I went to another store, and no one was really interested. And then one lady said, "Well, why don't you go and talk to the Christmas store?" And I'm like, "There's a Christmas store here?" So off I went to that store. I walked in there, and I probably had maybe 15 pieces with me. And the lady that actually owned the store happened to be there that day, fortunately. And she said, "I don't have time to look right now, but can you leave the stuff with me and maybe come back in an hour?" I said, "Yeah, that's not a problem." So we went and had some lunch and everything. And an hour later, I came back and again, this is what I tell people, we always tend to go to the negative first, but I walk in there and she sees me and she looks at me and smiles, that I've never seen anything. And as soon as she said that, my mind took over, and it just said, "I've never seen anything that I haven't really liked like this. It's no good." That's what my mind told me. What she actually said is, "I've never seen anything like this that I've liked this much." I walked out of there just flying high. She bought everything that I had, and she placed another huge order for that store. So I guess I just say that to tell people that as you're doing your carving, don't be so hard on yourselves. There's a lot of us out there that carve. And there's lots of us that carve to sell our pieces. There's lots of us that just carve, lots of people that just carve just to do it for themselves. And you know what? If you can be happy doing just carving, period, do it. because I've told lots of people one of the best things about carving is that if you're happy with it and you can put a smile on someone's face with what you do, then you've accomplished something. In this day and age, to be able to make someone smile with your work is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And that store, I sold there for quite a few years until it actually closed up. I had another store called Reasons to Believe that used to be in the Seattle area. And I phoned them one day after seeing a huge article on in a magazine on their store. And I called them and introduced myself. And it's not that I was anyone great or anything, but I thought maybe they'd be interested in seeing my work. And all they do is sell Santas. So I said, listen, I'm going to be in the neighborhood, and I thought maybe you'd be interested in seeing some of my stuff. And they said, yeah. And I didn't tell them that it was going to take me an 8-hour drive to get into their neighborhood, but they did see it. And I've been selling with them now. They're based out of Florida now. And I've been selling with them for, I'm going to say, probably close to 20 years now. A great relationship, great people. And so it goes. In 2007, when the economy really dropped off, I'd been carving full-time at that point. I was actually, just maybe give you a little background there, I was a hairdresser for 23 years. And in 2001, early 2001, I quit hairdressing and just to carve full-time. And of course, with my luck, I think I retired from carving in May of 2001 and was going great that summer. And then September 11th hit and kind of killed the market for a little while there. But things rebounded, fortunately for myself and for the world. But in 2007, the economy really dropped off, and I was having a hard time making a go of it. So I actually went back to school, which at 47 years old at the time was probably the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life. But I did go back to school, studied really hard, passed that course that I took to become a steam engineer. And I now work at a pulp mill in the town here in Castlegar, BC that I live in. And I work shift work. So I work 4 shifts at a time. I work 2 12-hour days, then 2 12-hour night shifts. And then I have 4 days off. And on the 4 days off, once you've kind of recouped your strength from working 2 night shifts, that's when I get my carving done. And like Blake had said, right now I have carved, I think the exact number is just about 9,350 Santas. They are in collections all around the world. I'll show you a few of the ones here in a few minutes that I have that we own, and I really don't actually have that many pieces of my own. We probably have maybe 40 pieces that we own ourselves, but it's a nice problem to have as an artist, that you can sell everything that you make. People come to me and say, oh, do you have something for sale? Do you have any stock? And I don't. The pieces that I make are generally all sold while they're still in a plank and a basswood in my garage. They're cut out, they're carved, and they're shipped out either to a store or to collectors. I said I've been very fortunate, very blessed to be able to do what I love to do. And for me, my carving journey has been to carve Santas. It's not just carving. I love to carve Santas, but my love is not just carving. It's to carve Santas, and there's something just nostalgic about it. It's the look on someone's face when you hand them a piece and they get that smile on their face. I've always said, in this day and age, if you can make someone smile with something that you do it. It's so important. And for me, I love to carve Santas. And if I never sold another Santa in my life, I'd just have a house full of them because I'd still carve them. It's where my love is to do it. Yep.
Dave, just a quick question. how much time do you spend on carving each day? I know you've got 4 days off and you got to sleep, but how much time do you spend?
Yeah, good question. Depending on the day, there's lots of times when I'll be in my studio here working. And just depends on the day. I can be in here anywhere from, say 6:30 till 8 in the morning, getting in here, and I may have to leave a few times during the day, but a lot of times I work right till supper time. And then my wife is a piano teacher, so in the evening she's writing lessons and stuff like that. So my studio is set up with a sofa and everything and a TV. So we'll be in here together, and lots of times after supper, we'll just continue to work. So and not last night, I think the night before, I carved till about 10:30 that night. So it's not unusual in November. I try, depending on my schedule at the pulp mill, if I can get the month off and stay home, then I'm in here and I bury myself in here. So this last November in 2021, I think I ended up having about 35 days off, and I was in here every day and probably 12 plus hours easily every day. And I think in that 35 days, I carved about 70 Santas. And that's just not the carving, that's the painting and polishing and everything and getting those out the door. But as lots of you guys know, lots of you ladies know, once you start carving, time just goes. It's not unusual for my wife to walk in here at supper time and just say, "Have you eaten anything today?" And no, I haven't. I just been carving away. I put headphones on, I put some music on, or I have a computer right by where I carve, and I may put a Netflix movie or something on. And it's not that you're actually watching, it's just more noise in your ears. But I find headphones are great. It just takes all the distractions away, and off I go. So does anyone else have any questions while we're going here? Please ask away.
Hey, Dave, this is Blake. Do you have a way to track orders that you do, and how do you keep track of all the carvings that are going out the door?
So what I do is I keep a book here, and I have all of the numbers registered. So if someone, I got an email last week from some people in Australia, and they 22 years ago, 2000, they lived in this area. We're surrounded by mountains, and Red Mountain in Rossland is a really good ski resort. These people, the husband and wife, they moved here for 6 months just to ski from Australia, which is not unusual around here. And in this email, they said they had found my carvings in a store in that little town, that it was one of the first places I ever sold in, and they could only afford one carving. They found one they really liked, and they bought that and they took it home. And he said within the last year, I'm assuming, they got a rescue dog, and last week or 2 weeks ago, they left the dog alone in the house, and they went out, and the carving was sitting there, and the dog got a hold of it and just ate it. And he was wondering if I could replace that one. And I said, well, yeah, I said, I can probably carve that one again for you, but if you can, send me the number off the bottom. I'm sort of interested to see, what one it is and when I made it. The dog had mangled it so bad you couldn't even read the number. It was somewhere in the 2000s, but literally the face was gone, the hat was gone off it. This dog just went to town on it. But I am going to try and remake that piece for them and send it down to Australia. But for the most part, it's hard to track where all the Santas go. But I do know all over the United States, I have a collector in Scotland. I only wish I owned as many as they own. They have a huge collection of my work, and generally order 2 or 3 Santas every year that I ship to them. I know I have Santas in Australia, New Zealand, all over Europe. It's very humbling, very nice compliment when people are willing to spend their hard-earned money on what you make, it's a great compliment.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
I just wanted to let you know I bought one of your Santas back in about 2005 at Reason to Believe.
Okay.
I had to go out to LA on some business and actually booked a side flight so I get into Seattle to check out the store. And I picked up one of your Santas as well as, and then the owner did clay Santas. I don't remember his name, but he did some clay Santas and I picked up one of his.
Yeah, that is Dennis Brown. And Dennis and Scott Schultz own that store. Scott now runs the website for that place out in that store out of Florida. Dennis is still in Seattle. I was actually messaging him this morning. Easily probably one of the foremost clay artists for Santas in the world. What he does with clay is absolutely phenomenal. And until I kind of hooked up with that store, I had never really sat down with another artist. So by the time I got together with Reasons to Believe, I'd actually been carving for 10 years. And again, at that time, there was no internet. There was just books. I literally devoured anything that I could find on carving. I did a lot of art when I was in high school, and but never any carving at all. I always tell people being a hairdresser for 23 years was actually great for my wood carving, because there's a real similarity. And I tell people that and they just start laughing, like, what do you mean? Like carving to cutting hair? And I always liken it to like a math equation, A plus B equals C. So A is what you're starting out with. So it's a block of wood, or in my case, it was a head of hair. C is where you want to get. You know what you want that finished product to look like, but what you have to figure out is B. You have to figure out how to get there. And all my years of hairdressing, because you're sort of working in the round, and once the hair's on the floor, you can't really put it back on. And it's the same as the wood carving. You start out with that block of wood, you take something off, it ends up on the floor, and you can't really put it back on. And so my hairdressing career actually was a great help in helping me carve in the round, right? But working with Dennis and Scott in Seattle was a huge advantage for me. Like I said, I'd been carving for just about 10 years when I got to work with them. And what they did every summer was they brought in a whole bunch of different artists, different Santa carvers from all over the United States. I was the only Canadian that was usually there. And I actually got to sit down for the first time and start to talk to these guys and look at what they were doing and figuring out some things. And it was nice that I think in my case that I had that 10 years on my own, because you start to develop your own style without taking on too much of the styles of the person that's teaching you. So I had my own style already, but I was really able to talk to these guys and see what they were doing. One of the guys, Al Longo, I was looking at one of his Santas one day, and I'm looking at these little trees that he had, and I'm like, how do you carve those trees in there? Like on your Santas, I go, those lines are so fine, that cut is so clean. I said, I can't keep my small tools that sharp. And he's like, no, I don't carve those. He goes, I burn those in. I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah. And so he talked to me about wood burning. And if you see my work now, I probably use wood burning on, man, I probably have about 200 plus different designs, and probably 190 of them have some sort of wood burning on them somewhere. I just use it to enhance, or I use it as a detail for texture somewhere on them. And that was, again, something I probably wouldn't have discovered if I hadn't been able to sit with these guys and talk for a little while. Does anyone have any more questions? Please just ask away. Love them.
Dave, we had somebody ask about the books that are behind you. Are those reference books for carving?
Yeah, actually, there's lots of the ones. There's Woodcarving Illustrated and Carving Magazine. There's lots up here that are country home and country living. I have probably 5 shelves of books in here, and yeah, they're just reference material. Again, because when I started carving, there was no internet. You kept the books, right? So I don't buy that many now because you can find everything online. But these are ones I don't really want to throw away. I don't want to cut them up just to keep certain pages. Some of the magazines are really cool because I can look back and think, wow, I bought that when I was just starting. And you flip through them now and think, wow, that's where I got that idea. Or that's where I got that idea. And I do get asked that a lot too, and probably lots of you guys do too, is where do you get your ideas? And I think once you open your mind to it, it's amazing where you'll get ideas for a carving from, whether, like for in my case, it's a Santa, but you know, whatever you're carving. Some of the ideas I've got have come from the most ridiculous places that have absolutely nothing to do with Christmas, nothing to do with Santas at all, but it's just something that triggers something in your mind and ooh, I could use that for an idea. And that's all it takes, but you have to be kind of willing to do it. And again, the person that asked me how many hours I carve a day, I've been very fortunate. My wife, my family, it has been very supportive. My wife has to to clean up a lot of wood chips around our house. We used to have a little dog that would come and grab mouthfuls of them and run around the house with them, but she's gone now, so I can't really blame her on the wood chips that get scattered around the house. I try to keep them as much in my studio as I can and keep it neat, but they do get on your clothes and stuff and get tracked. But no, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of support. And someone told me a long time ago, if you can, carve every day, even if it's just a few minutes. And that's what I tell people. If you can, the more you can do it, the better you're going to get. And you can read every book in the world about carving, but until you actually put a tool into the wood to see how it's going to react. And I tell people, I take a knife and tell them, you can hold your knife like this, or you can hold it at that angle or that angle. And just that little bit of difference going into the wood is going to make a huge difference in your outcome, whether you're going to lop something off or, we all make mistakes, and some stuff can be fixed. You can carve away a little deeper. Some stuff you can't. Just depends on the piece. So I'm sorry, I saw a couple questions come up there. If you can just tell me what those are, I can.
Yeah, the first one, Dave, they're wanting to know, have you considered putting together a pattern book?
I haven't, and it's not that I'm hiding any great secret or anything. For me, a lot of the stuff gets made up as I go along. I'll show you some pieces in a minute here. Some of the most popular pieces that I do are called tall hat Santas, and they come in different sizes and stuff, but the main gist is that they have a tall hat, and on that hat I put a lot of different I change it out and everything, but the actual pattern for that Santa is so plain. There's not really any pattern to it. I've always encouraged people, if you're going to if you look at another artist's work and you want to try to duplicate or something, try and change it a bit, try and change it up, make it a little bit of your own. I have seen pieces of mine on Pinterest and stuff that people have taken my design and they've tried to do it, but they've tried to do it exactly the same way. And my first thought is always, why don't you just change it a little bit? Just do something just to make it your own. And for me, the pattern, it's just not that I'm hiding anything or anything. It's just I've never got around to it. I am so busy between the shift work that I do and carving. To give you an idea, right now, I just shipped last week the last of my internet orders that were placed before Christmas. Like crazy. It was unfortunate. I did have a little bout with COVID in January, and that put me a few weeks behind. but the backlog of orders is heavy right now. Probably well over 100 pieces on back order that if I had them done tomorrow, I could ship them all. But again, as an artist, it's certainly a nice problem to have. It doesn't bother me. It actually motivates me to work even harder. But yeah, so again, there's a couple more questions there.
Sure. The next one, and you may want to talk about the whole process, but they want to know how you seal or finish your carvings. So if you can talk a little bit about painting and then also sealing and finishing.
Sure. I'll take the phone. I'm gonna just bear with me for a sec here, and I'm going to bring it over and show you some of my stuff over here. Oh, let's get this set up here. And if I screw this up, because I'm hand holding the camera here, the phone. So if I mess it up and you can't see something, please let me know. But what I was saying before, this is how this piece starts out. So there's the cutout. This is a 2-inch piece of basswood. It's 9 inches tall. And there's my pattern. So for the tall hat Santas, I probably have maybe 40 different designs, and the majority of them can be made from that cutout there. So that's how I start out. And again, I get asked too, well, how do you carve? Do you use tools? Do you use power? The only power that I use is a bandsaw to cut out that initial shape. Past this, it's all done with just hand tools, the way it's been done for hundreds of years. So I did this one yesterday. So here's a rough out of this piece. This takes from this stage here to this stage takes me about 30 minutes. And this one still has lots of little fuzzies and wood chips and everything. It has not been cleaned up at all, but I can take it from this stage to this stage in about 30 minutes. And that's the fast part of the carving, where you're just roughing it out. There's wood chips flying everywhere. I have, fortunately, wear glasses because I'd probably get chips in the eyes. I mean, when I carve to this stage, I'm moving pretty fast. From this stage on, I sit down with the detail knife and fine tools, the smaller tools, detail tools, and just clean everything up. Lots of cleaning up, which then takes me to this stage. And that is probably going to be another, I want to say maybe an hour to an hour and a half to get it where it's finished. And then this one I did wood burn last night too, just to show you on a piece where the wood burning is. And then once everything is burned, then I sit down and do my painting. And you can see where the wood burning is. Let me move back a bit here. There you go. With the wood burning to the finishing, so the checks around the bottom, the checks on the hat, the little trees, it's really almost using it like a stop cut where the paint stays in that area. It doesn't bleed out, but it also, I used to paint these little checks across the bottom by hand, and they were never neat. And I just was not happy with the effect that I was getting. So being able to do it with wood burning just made it so much neater. You get a little bit of smoke from it and stuff, but you deal with that. But the effect for me is just so much better. So I did those up just to give you an idea of the stages that I go through. I do get asked, Blake asked me today, if I seal the carvings before I paint them. No, I don't. This one right here is right off the tool. I finished that one. I drew on the lines where I was going to do the wood burning and burned it. And from this, it is ready for paint right then. I use acrylic paint, just your regular, your standard, here's a bottle of my white Americana, just the regular paints. I have a whole bunch of different colors that I use. I try and keep, a good supply on hand so I don't run out. But the paint is thinned out. considerably. So the only places that I use the solid color of the acrylic paint is on the white, the flesh, and then on a few colors. This one has a little blue around the star here. That's a solid blue, but everything else you see on here, the brown on the gloves, the red, the green, that is all highly diluted with water. And it goes on more as a wash. It sinks right into the wood. And then when I do my antiquing on, it brings out the grain. It pops the grain out. And I was talking earlier to one of the guys just about painting and saying that, unfortunately, over the years, I've seen some absolutely spectacular wood carvings that have been ruined by a bad paint job. And the carving was spectacular. I wish they had just left the piece as it was, because the carving was beautiful, but they took that paint and however they applied it, it did not do them any favors at all. And what I've always told people too is, don't experiment on your final piece. Take a piece of scrap basswood, take the wood, whatever wood you're carving, take that scrap of wood and carve the surface. So don't just use it on the plain surface you would have bought, from the store. Carve it away. Just take a shallow gouge, even clean it up, and then do your painting on there. Try to experiment with different washes, with different solid colors. There's this Santa here, and I'm not sure if it's going to show up quite as well. Maybe at that angle it will. This red that's on the cuffs in the buffalo plaid, and the red that's in the actual gown are the same color. It's the same one. But I used the red on here. I used it straight out of the bottle. It's solid. I did not dilute it at all. And then the color on the coat here shows up a bit better on the back here. This is diluted. This is the solid red. So when I antique this, all the grain is going to show through. It's just going to pop. But look at the difference. It's the same color, but I've managed to get two totally different shades out of that. And then on these trees on the hat and the trees around the bottom, I've actually used two shades of green. I used a really dark, it's actually called phthalo green. And underneath here is a Kelly green. So I paint the Kelly green first, and then I put this, the phthalo green, the darker one, on after, and just sort of blend it up with water. It is acrylic, so you can dilute it with water. But again, it's just experimenting, trying to figure out how to do it, but don't do it on your finished piece. I did see someone there just ask me about what I do for antiquing. And again, it goes back to that very first book that I learned from Ron Ransom, is I use shoe polish. And really, shoe polish, all it is a wax, a colored wax. So I use a shoe cream, and anywhere like on this little guy here, so this is the little ornament on this hat part here, where it's a wash, but it's a very light color, I actually put a clear or neutral shoe polish on that part first. Then I polish it, buff it all off, and then I put on the dark brown. If I put the dark brown on that part initially, it would just soak right in there and you wouldn't see that shade. It would just go like a muddy brown. So all I'm doing is putting a little bit of a protection on there before. So what I do is I paint them. I spray them with a matte a satin varathane very lightly and let them dry overnight. And then I go right to my antiquing after that. And because it's a wax, when I clean these pieces, they just need to be cleaned with a terry towel cloth. And here's my infamous very first Santa that I ever did. And this one was done 1992. So 30 years ago this coming November. And this piece here, I take it with a little terry towel cloth and buff it off, and it looks as good as the day that I made them. But the difference is the pieces are just a little more polished now, a little more artistic. This one shows some of the painting that I like to do. This one goes right from a white up to a dark blue, has a little bit of purple mixed in there just to give it the sky, and then the trees and the snow were put on after just to give it a little bit of a winter night sky look to it. And this is the sort of painting that you want to try. You want to try and experiment with, instead of just putting on paint, slapping it on there. Try to play with it a bit. I was telling the guys earlier, I just saw a video on Instagram, and it was a lady, a local artist here, and she was painting this beautiful outdoor picture of trees and everything. And it's how she was doing it. And I thought, that's incredible. She was using oils, but I'm looking at it going, how can I transfer that idea into what I'm doing? So I saved the video, and I haven't had time to sit down and do anything with it yet, but I'm going to sit down. I'm going to try and figure out how I can take her technique that she used to get that finish on this painting of the forest and do it on mine. And I might be able to do it. I might not. Like I said, she's using oil. I'm using acrylic. I might be able to do it on wood, where she was working on canvas. But that's, again, it's the fun of doing it. Just figure it out, experiment with it. You can do it. You can do it, but you just have to try. And again, I have a whole bunch of my pieces here. I own very few of my pieces. Again, the majority of them are sold before I even make them. So every once in a while, I do manage to carve a new one for us, and we keep it in our collection. There's a fun one right here. This was a Halloween one that I did years ago. The jack-o'-lantern tall hat Santa, the big spider web across the back, and the jack-o'-lanterns on his head. But carving is fun. Don't make it harder than what it is. But again, the thing with carving is that you have to do it. You have to put a tool into the wood to learn how to do it. Someone had just asked, I think I just saw a question pop up there about sealing. Do I apply it directly? Did you guys catch that sort?
We had one question about applying shoe cream right out of the container.
Yeah, I apply it directly out of the container. I actually just use I use a toothbrush. My wife laughs at me, but I always say whenever we go to the dentist for a checkup and stuff, they always give you a toothbrush to take home. We use electric toothbrushes, so we don't need them. But I always say, hey, can I have an extra one too? And they give me a couple of them. And then when she goes or our kids go, I always get them to bring them home. So I have a whole collection of brand new toothbrushes. And that's what I apply them with, because it gets right in the cracks. And another good trick too that I learned years ago from a gift store was for dusting. And this can go for lots of different things, but this is the best duster that you will ever find. And it was a lady at a gift store that told me it was one of their candle salespeople that told them when you dust the candles, you don't want to pick them up and rub a towel on them. So just to use a paintbrush. So all I did was went out and bought these. They're unfinished handles. You buy them probably in a 3-pack or a 6-pack, and you just keep them. And they're the greatest thing for dusting. The carvings get a little dust in the cracks and stuff. You go over it with that paintbrush and a towel, and it works great. Just cleans them right up. Someone asked what kind of shoe cream I use. I use Meltonian. Over the years, I've used different types. It's hard to stay with the same type because the companies keep moving. They sell, or they get taken over by another company. And so over the years, I've just kind of kept trying to follow where I can get it from. But yeah, generally it's just a shoe cream. You can use any type, but you want the cream, not the hard paste, just the cream. It's just like it's almost the consistency of whipped cream. That's what you want to use. That's what you want to use. I'll go put this camera back over here where I'm not moving around with it all the time. There we go. Keep
Hey,
everyone.
Dave, another question from the chat. A couple people have asked where you've gotten your basswood. There's one person from British Columbia wanting to know if you have a source up that way.
Yep, depending on where they're at. I get mine in Kelowna from Reimer Hardwoods. It's about a 3-hour drive for me, around about a 3-hour drive one way for me to go and get my basswood. So when I go over, I usually try and load up with about as much as I can. And I manage I usually only have to go about once a year, and I buy enough to hold me over. But Reimer Hardwoods, I know depending where the person is that asked, they are in Kelowna. They're in Abbotsford, just outside of Vancouver. And I think they used to be in Victoria. I'm not sure if they're there anymore, but I know the head office is in Abbotsford, and the one in Kelowna where I go.
There was a question in the chat about how you sign your carving. Do you burn it in or do you use a pen?
No, I sign it with a paintbrush. Let me just grab one and I'll show you. Oh, excuse me. So there is how I sign. I sign a little half tree and then my name. And then on the bottom of every Santa also, I put my name, Castlegar, BC, and the number of that carving, everyone. And that actually started because when I carry stuff across the border to ship into the United States and everything, all the pieces actually have to be permanently marked with the country of origin. So that's how I started doing it, but I just continue to do it still. It's a little advertising for the town that I live in, but it also does put that that name on there. The funny thing, it was, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I got a call from City Hall, and they had had someone contact them there. There was a letter there, and it came to it was something like Dave Francis, Santa Carver, care of Castlegar, BC, and it actually ended up at City Hall. So I'm assuming someone just got it off the bottom of that carving, and they just wrote the letter. And fortunately, I live in a small town, not a huge town, because I would never ever heard about that. Yeah, the hole in the bottom of the carving. Yes. So the hole in the bottom of the carving is actually for a carving screw. So depending on what sort of carving you do, you need to be, well, obviously in any carving you do, you want to be safe with how you carve. What I do is I use a carving screw. So that hole that you saw on the bottom there is actually where this was mounted. And then on these pieces here, this big wing nut comes off, and it's mounted actually into this right here, which is a carving arm. So this piece will come up through here. The Santa sits right on the end of it, and it allows me to be able to carve with two hands and carve really safely. So for me, over the years, I've tried lots of different things. I have tried carving gloves, and I just, they are safe. And you know what, if you use them, please keep using them. For me personally, I found they were more of a hindrance to me, but I can do probably in this carving arm with that carving screw, I can rough out the carvings pretty quickly, and it's very safe to do it that way because you have two hands free. You're not trying to hold the carving. I remember when I first started carving, I was trying to hold them between my knees, and I went to the hospital a few times for stitches in my leg. This is a much safer way of doing it. So whatever way you carve, I use a carving arm. There's lots of guys that use the vise with the bowling ball kind of vise type. It just, whatever works for you. But the main thing is stay safe and keep your fingers out from in front of that that sharp edge. They're not very forgiving. So.
Hey Dave, you have such a, your work. When I see your work, I know exactly where it comes from and whose it is. How long have you had that style, or when did you develop that style after 30 years? Have you been doing it for like most of that time, or is it something you just became in the last bit, or?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I certainly, again, like I'd mentioned earlier, it was 10 years before I actually got to sit and talk with other carvers in person. And I think that did help me to develop that own style. Anytime you're going to learn, whether it's taking a class, or in my case, I sat with a book and tried to learn that way. You're going to take some of the characteristics of whoever is teaching you or whatever medium you're learning from. But what will happen with some people is they just stay with that. They're happy. I don't know if they're happy with that or whatever, but they don't really feel the need or want to go outside that. I couldn't do that. I started carving, and then once I got to a certain point, I thought, "Ooh, I have to try this." And I started really building. I started, I guess, like you said, developing my own style. I would probably say, looking back on pieces, probably within the first couple years, and then you just start building on it. And there's still new things I do. I have my iPad I live with, and I have pages in there. I have a drawing program there and an iPencil, and I can draw new ideas as I get them. And I cannot draw to save my life. I can figure out how to get it into the wood, but I mean, when I draw a picture, it's almost like a stick man sort of thing. I wish I could carve better. I wish I could draw better. I can carve, but the drawing, no, it's an embarrassing skill on my part. But as far as developing that style, you just keep going. You naturally evolve, I guess. And if you're like me, you always want to try new things. You want to get new ideas. Or I'll see something and I'll think, wait, how could I do that? How can I make that my style, sort of thing? It's just doing it. It's putting putting that knife into the wood. The more you carve, the better you're going to get, but you're also going to start to develop your own style. And but it's just time. It's just doing it and doing it and doing it.
That's great. Thanks, Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Yep.
With the first one you showed us, you said that you cut it out on the bandsaw, but you said from that one, you've probably got 10, 12, 15 that you do, designs you do from that one cutout.
Yeah.
Cutout.
Yeah.
Do you draw? Do you take one of those cutouts and draw on it? Or do you transfer that to a piece of paper and then experiment with how do you develop those 10 or 12 designs for that one cutout?
Yep. So again, I guess this is where experience comes into place, just because I've done it so much. I will cut out that basic shape, like you said there, or I have a few variations. It may have, that one is just a straight one. I may have one that has a little bump on the side for a ball on the hat. Sometimes I can picture it in my mind, so I know where I'm going as I start. Some of them, it's a fluid concept. I'll start just with very basic stuff, the hair and the brim of the hat, and then I'll start experimenting. Sometimes I will draw out an idea, but it's not like I have any hard and fast design to go to. Usually it's usually sort of a thing I make up as I go along, or I have a very rough idea where I'm headed. But as far as I let the wood talk to me, no, I generally have a pretty good idea of where I'm going as I do it. And someone just asked about my carving arm. Excuse the jiggle here, but I'll show you what it is. So it's sitting in a tail vise of my workbench here, and all this is made up of 2x4s. And when I started carving, I had no money. I couldn't afford to buy one of these, and they do sell them. I'm going to say they're probably, you know, 150, 200 different, $200. They come with articulating arms. So this piece on the end here, actually you can move and tilt and everything. I tried to do that when I first started carving. I couldn't afford one, so I actually looked in the catalog that I had, and I took the measurements, and I just said, okay, I think I can make that. And so I kind of made it myself, and I actually tried to do it so I could move this arm part, and I couldn't keep it tight enough. It would just collapse on me. So I kind of found the optimum angle that worked for me, and I just put stove bolts through it, and that's where I use now. I use it on every Santa except for the ornaments and stuff, which they're really small. They don't go in here. But on this one here, I've carved ones from 7 inches tall up to 2 feet tall. It's very strong. It's getting beat up now, and it's getting rounded off and everything from wood, you know, the tools chipping it and everything, but it's mine. I paid about $2 to build it, you know, 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And now it's just nostalgia. I have to use it now. I'm not going to go out and buy a brand new one. It stays with me now. So I saw a few more questions pop up there. I couldn't keep track of all of them.
Can you show some more of your work, Dave?
Yep. You'll have to excuse the jiggle here, but I'm just going to hand hold it here. Come back over to my table here. So one piece I'll show you up here, and this is one I did for my wife a few years ago, quite a few years ago now. And this one's called Lighting the Pathway. And when I did him, let me just get this light out here. There you go. When I did him at that time, I wanted to use every kind of trick that I could in the book. But it was when I first started carving, I would always round everything off. You want to round everything off. And then one day I'm thinking, you know what? I wonder if I kind of used all the corners. So this piece of, this is 12 inches tall. He's 4 inches thick. But what I did when I kind of show, how can I describe this basket on the back here, instead of, I would normally round that piece off for the arm of the Santa. I thought, you know what, that wood sticks out right there. I'm going to use that. And then on down here on his lantern, the same thing. Normally that would all get rounded off. I thought, you know what, that block is square on the edge. I can use that kind of space there to put something. So he had the lantern there, and then this one, and turn this light so you can get some of this detail. The wonderful wood carver Nancy Goff, and Nancy unfortunately doesn't carve anymore, but literally one of my wood carving heroes. She just absolutely phenomenal wood carver. Did a basket weaving tutorial that I found somewhere, and I thought, you know what, I bet I could use that, and I kind of tweaked it and made it my own. But it's just a technique of being able to make it look like it's a carved wooden basket. And I just love this technique. It's very picky. It does take time. It's not for someone that wants to rush through their carving at all. And then there's lots of wood burning done on it also. But on the pictures that the guys were putting up advertising this weekend, you'll see a really big Santa that I did called the Polar Bear Christmas. And it's the one, the big Santa. He has a polar bear, his arm around a polar bear, and then he has a backpack with another baby polar bear sticking its head out. There is one of the shots that shows a really good shot of the back of that basket, and that gives you a little more detail of showing like a close-up detailed picture of that Santa. I am from Canada, of course, so we do have the Mountie Santa, which is a incredibly popular piece. And again, when you're talking about where ideas come from, when I was cutting hair, I actually had a girl that was one of my clients, and she was an RCMP member. And I was talking to her saying, yeah, I've had some people ask me, they want me to do a Mountie carving. I said, would you happen to have any, material at home, something I can sort of get an idea from? And she actually brought me in a coloring book. And this isn't the exact picture that the coloring book was, but it gave me an idea. And from that little picture in the coloring book, that's where I came up with this idea. And it's been a very, very popular piece. I call it the absolute quintessential Canadian Christmas souvenir. You get the Mountie and the maple leaf and the Santa all in one.
Dave, there's a question if you have a favorite Santa to carve.
A favorite Santa to carve. You know what? I have in the past, and I definitely have my favorites. I wouldn't say it's probably my favorite Santa to carve because it's actually a lot of work. But when it's all done, it has to be my favorite Santa, and it's called the Piggyback Santa and Polar Bear. I don't have one here. But if you look on my website, you'll find it, just the Piggyback Santa and Polar Bear. And it was actually a one that I designed for a reproduction company years ago in the States. And it's a Santa piggybacking a full polar bear on his back. And then the polar bear is holding a tree, and there's a baby polar bear hanging off that tree. And I think actually on my Instagram feed, you'll find a picture of it too. The carving itself it's pretty intricate. It's quite detailed, and there's a lot to it to do it. So I won't say it's my favorite one to actually carve, but when it's finished, I love it. It's one of those carvings that tells a story all on its own. You don't need anything else. You can just look at it and it makes people laugh. That's again the greatest thing, that puts that smile on someone's face when they see your work. Love it, absolutely love it. So.
Would you mind moving the camera back to the stable base?
Oh, I sure can. Yeah, I know you guys are gonna get seasick with me here. There we go.
Another question in the chat, Dave. What kind of burning tip do you use, or what kind of wood burner do you use?
I use the razor tip system. It's a Canadian company from Saskatchewan. I generally, probably about 90% of what I do, I use just the regular skew tip. I probably own about 10 or 15 of them, because I actually break them. I burn on the highest setting. So when I burn it, it's on a rheostat. You can dial it from 1 to 10. I burn on 10. I want it to be a dark line on there. I use it almost like another paint color sort of thing. And so when you're burning it with that hot, that tip gets red hot, and they do break. So the company does fix them. You send them back. So usually after I have 4 or 5 that the tips have snapped on me, I send them back to them, and it's a nominal charge. They resolder them, they put them together again, you get them sent back to, and they're as good as new. But I just have enough that I can rotate them so I don't run out of them. But generally just the skew tip. I have a couple other, maybe 3 or 4 little tips that I use for some special stuff. But again, 90% plus, I just use that skew tip for burning though. So any more questions there, folks?
We had another person
going
ask.
back to your, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Dave, going back to your antiquing, what color shoe cream do you use for your dark antiquing?
Yeah, off the top of my head, just think what it's called. I think it's called Dusky Brown. It's the actual shade. What you want to do is whatever brand you use or whatever, you don't want a warm brown, you want a cool brown. So you don't want any red in it or anything like that. You want it to actually be a cooler shade. Unfortunately, most of the places, if you're there and you're looking at them, they don't really want you to open up the they don't want you to open up the jar because it starts to dry it out. So you just sort of have to experiment. But the best thing is just hit the internet and start looking. Like I said, the companies do change their name. I think when I started, it was I think it was Tana, and then they went out of business, or they got swallowed up by another company, and then it went to something else, and then I think it's Meltonian now, but I think they might have gone out of business too. It's been a little while since I bought some. The last time I bought it, I think I bought 30 or 40 jars of it at one time, just because I don't want to get stuck without it. But yeah, best thing is just hit the internet and see what you can come up with.
One other question on small
Thanks.
carvings, Dave. What do you use to hold small carvings if you're not using the carving arm?
So when it's just the small carvings, what I do is I take the carving arm out of the vise. I put the wood into the actual vise, like when I carve my ornaments or any of the really small Santas. Those ones are all about 4.5 to 5 inches tall. I rough them out actually just in the vise, and then past that, they're just all handheld.
All right. Any other questions for Dave today? All right, Dave. Well, we appreciate you coming on today. I think most everybody who carves has seen your work sometime or another. I know I started seeing it years and years ago when I first started, and also had some interactions with Nancy Goff early on, and she was a big influence as far as me carving Santa. So that's really neat that you brought her up. I actually have some tools that has her name burnt in the end of them that she sent to me as an early carver. So that's really, really great to hear her being an influence on your carving. Just want to say thank you for coming on. Thanks for taking time out to explain your process to us and talk a little bit about your carving. Again, if you all want to check out Dave's work, go out to SnowCottageCarvings on the web, or check him out on Instagram or Facebook. You can reach out to him there and contact him if you're interested in getting one of his pieces. Just want to remind everybody again, we'll be doing a newsletter that's going to be coming up. We have a sign-up sheet that's out on our link tree if you want to get out and sign up for that. That'll be released beginning in March, and we'll plan on doing that each month. We should have a lot of information in there as far as things that's coming up, some fun stuff that we're going to be doing that we won't be doing on these meetings. So look forward to that. And if you need to know how to sign up for that, reach out to one of us, but we'll have that link on all of our social media, so you'll be able to check it out there. Just want to remind you all, we've got quite a few presenters coming up. Next week, we'll have on Rich Snyder. He's going to be coming on and talking about his carving journey. Check him out on Instagram if you're not familiar with his work. He does some really unique caricatures. Roger Bean, who's usually on here, I'm not sure if Roger's on today, will be on March the 12th. Ray Meyer that is on with us today is going to be on March the 19th. Steve Tomaszek's going to be on April the 2nd. Joe Yu, CCA member, is going to be on April the 9th. Chris Hammock's going to come on April the 16th and talk a little bit more about carving the Rockies. So make sure you join us there on April the 16th to hear more about that show. And Brett Andrews is going to be on April the 23rd. Just wanted to remind you all that we will be signing up new presenters coming up. If you know of anybody that wants to present with us or come on and talk to us about their carving journey, have them reach out to myself, Tom, or Dave, and we'll be happy to get them on the schedule. And we thank you all for taking time out again. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties there at the beginning. Sometimes when you do a live show, you never know what you're going to get. So apologize for that, but thanks for bearing with us, and thanks for joining us today. We'll see you all next Saturday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with International Association of Woodcarvers. Thank you all.
Thank you.